How low can Disney go? It may be a phrase you've heard on your most recent cruise to the Bahamas, but it's also the question everyone is asking as Disney braces for a massive box office disaster with its live-action remake of Snow White, starring Rachel Zegler. What started as a promising reimagining of a Disney classic has turned into a PR nightmare, with plummeting projections, widespread controversy, and now, a moment at the Oscars that some believe was a direct slap in the face to Zegler herself. The chaos surrounding this film has reached a boiling point, and even Disney appears to be losing faith in the project. But what's worse for Zegler is that the very company that once championed her may now be subtly distancing itself. In what some are calling an intentional jab, Disney seemingly humiliated Zegler live at the Oscars, and the internet is buzzing with theories about what it all means. For months, Disney has been facing backlash over Snow White, but much of the controversy stems not from the film itself, but from Zegler's own comments about the original 1937 classic. In a now infamous interview, Zegler openly criticized the animated version, calling the prince a stalker and dismissing the film's love story as outdated and irrelevant. Her remarks quickly became a lightning rod for criticism, with fans accusing her of disrespecting the legacy of one of Disney's most beloved characters. Fast forward to the 2024 Oscars, and it seems Disney may have just taken its revenge. As Zegler walked onto the stage alongside Gal Gadot, the song playing in the background wasn't just any Disney tune. It was "Someday My Prince Will Come," the very song that contradicts everything Zegler has said about Snow White. If that sounds like an intentional move, you're not alone in thinking so. The moment itself was subtle, but powerful. Zegler and Gadot walked onto the Oscars stage, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. Observers quickly pointed out that Gadot did not acknowledge Zegler once. No glance, no interaction, nothing. Instead, she positioned herself front and center, leaving Zegler almost in the background. It was a move that did not go unnoticed by those watching, but the real dagger came in the form of the music. The song, "Someday My Prince Will Come" played as they made their entrance, a direct callback to the original Snow White, which Zegler had dismissed as an outdated relic. The irony was lost on no one. To make matters worse, the song isn't even featured in the new Snow White soundtrack, which replaced it with a modernized, supposedly more empowering version called "Waiting on a Wish." If this wasn't an intentional move by Disney, it was one of the most unfortunate coincidences in Hollywood history. But given how disastrous the Snow White rollout has been, many believe this was Disney's way of subtly rebuking Zegler for her past comments. Disney's handling of Snow White signals a broader shift in Hollywood's relationship with its audience. In recent years, studios have pushed modern reinterpretations of beloved classics, often infusing them with contemporary social and political themes. While some of these efforts have been successful, others have backfired spectacularly, alienating core audiences who feel that the reboots disrespect the original works. Zegler's remarks about Snow White are a prime example of how actors and studios sometimes miscalculate audience sentiment. Rather than celebrating the film's legacy, her comments came off as dismissive, fueling a growing divide between Hollywood elites and general audiences. Disney, once the king of mass market appeal, now finds itself in a precarious position, struggling to balance progressive storytelling with the expectations of its traditional fan base. If Disney is indeed turning its back on Zegler, the reason is obvious. Snow White is shaping up to be a massive financial flop. Initial projections had the film debuting with a respectable $63–70 million opening weekend. However, recent reports indicate that number has now dropped to a disastrous $48–53 million range. For context, The Marvels, one of the worst-performing Marvel films in history, opened to just $46 million. If Snow White continues on this downward trajectory, it could easily become one of Disney's biggest live-action failures. Why the sharp decline? The backlash against the film has been relentless. fans are not just rejecting Zegler's interpretation of the character, they're actively boycotting the movie. Social media is flooded with criticism, memes, and calls for audiences to skip the film entirely. The controversy surrounding Zegler's comments, combined with Disney's ongoing struggles to recapture its box office dominance, has created a perfect storm of bad press. All signs suggest that Disney may already be in damage control mode. The studio has been conspicuously silent about the film's promotional campaign, with far less marketing than what you'd expect for a tentpole release. The Oscars moment, whether intentional or not, only adds to the growing speculation that Disney is preparing to cut its losses and move on from the project as quickly as possible. It's not just Disney that seems to be distancing itself. There are also whispers of tension between Zegler and her Snow White co-star Gal Gadot. Their Oscars appearance only fueled these rumors, with Gadot's body language making it clear that she wasn't exactly thrilled to be sharing the stage. Could this be another sign that industry insiders are beginning to see Zegler as a liability rather than a rising star? With the film's release still months away, Disney is running out of time to salvage Snow White. But at this point, it's unclear whether any amount of damage control can save it. The backlash is already deeply entrenched, and audiences have shown time and time again that they're willing to turn their backs on films they feel are pushing the wrong message. Meanwhile, Zegler is in a precarious position. Once hailed as Hollywood's next big thing, she now finds herself at the center of one of the biggest industry controversies in recent years. If Snow White bombs as expected, it could have long-term consequences for her career. The industry has a short memory, but a high-profile flop, especially one as controversial as this, can be difficult to recover from. As for Disney, the question remains, will they continue to stand by Zegler, or will they fully pivot away from her and the project? If the Oscars moment is any indication, they may have already made their decision. The Snow White debacle is a textbook example of what happens when Hollywood tries to rewrite the classics while alienating the very audience that made them successful in the first place. From Zegler's controversial remarks to Disney's lukewarm support, this film has been a disaster from the start. Now, with box office expectations sinking lower and public sentiment firmly against it, the future of Snow White looks bleak. Whether Disney intended to embarrass Zegler at the Oscars or not, the fact remains. This film is in trouble, and the studio may already be looking for an escape hatch. As we inch closer to its release, one thing is certain. Hollywood is watching, and so are audiences. The final question is not whether Snow White will fail, but just how spectacular that failure will be. The discussion around Disney's latest live-action adaptation, particularly Snow White, has been filled with controversy and concern. The film's box office performance, marketing strategy, and casting decisions have raised significant questions about its potential success or failure. Many industry analysts and commentators are already predicting that this could be one of Disney's biggest financial disasters in recent years. From the beginning, projections for the film's box office have been alarming. When analyzing its economic viability, some have struggled to understand how a Disney movie could perform so poorly, especially given that even casual viewers wandering into a theater should generate more revenue. If Snow White fails to make at least $50 million in its domestic box office opening, it may be a sign that audiences have completely turned away from Disney's current direction. This raises the question, is there genuine animosity toward Disney among viewers? If so, that could explain why the company is seemingly on the verge of cutting ties with Rachel Zegler, the film's lead actress, and perhaps even mocking her at a major public event like the Oscars. The performance of this film could indicate a significant shift in audience perception, signaling that Disney's brand has been tainted by recent controversies. One of the most fascinating aspects of Disney's promotional campaign for Snow White is its aggressive attempt to associate the film with the original animated classic. In recent weeks, TV spots have been injecting animated clips into their promotional material, trying to blend them with the new live-action footage. This marketing trick seems designed to convince audiences that the film is a direct remake of the beloved 1937 classic, even though it has been widely reported that the new version deviates significantly from the original story. This kind of misleading marketing raises concerns about audience backlash. If viewers enter the theater expecting a faithful adaptation but instead find a radically different story, word-of-mouth negativity could spread like wildfire, leading to an even steeper box office decline after opening weekend. Another revealing aspect of the film is its soundtrack. Music is often an early indicator of a movie's tone and direction, and in this case, it suggests that Disney is steering Snow White away from its traditional fairy tale roots and into more politically charged territory. Some critics have pointed out that the film seems to embrace themes of modern social justice, which could alienate audiences expecting a timeless, magical experience akin to the original. If Snow White underperforms domestically, can international markets save it? Historically, Disney films have relied on strong overseas performances to boost their total earnings. However, Snow White is such a well-known and cherished story worldwide that any major deviations from the classic could lead to similar rejections in international markets. The film would need to achieve a 3-to-1 ratio of international to domestic earnings just to break even, which seems increasingly unlikely given the growing skepticism around it. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937, was the foundation of Disney's empire. It was the film that made Disney a household name and allowed the company to build the empire it has today. For almost a century, the original Snow White has been deeply embedded in Disney's culture and public perception. Given this legacy, it is shocking that Disney would take such drastic creative liberties with the new adaptation. If they had chosen to stay true to the original story and cast an actress that resonated better with fans, this movie had the potential to be a billion-dollar hit. It could have even surpassed Beauty and the Beast, 2017, which, despite mixed reviews, still earned over $1 billion worldwide. Instead, Rachel Zegler's public comments and perceived arrogance have become one of the biggest hurdles for the film. Many believe that Disney did not fully understand the kind of actress they had hired. Zegler, who rose to fame through YouTube before being cast in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, has had a rocky transition into Hollywood. Despite being given multiple opportunities, none of her films have been successful, and she has gained a reputation for being outspoken in a way that alienates audiences rather than endearing them. The backlash against Zegler is not just about her performance or casting. It stems largely from her own words. She has openly criticized the original Snow White, made dismissive comments about the classic story, and displayed what some interpret as an entitled attitude. She has even admitted to being narcissistic and suffering from morbid depression, statements that, while honest, have not helped her public image. If Disney is trying to market Snow White as a nostalgic trip back to its roots, Zegler's past comments and persona could work against them. Even if the initial marketing convinces some people to buy tickets, disappointment in the film's departure from the classic could spread rapidly, further damaging its box office potential. One of the most telling moments of Zegler's declining status in Hollywood occurred at the Oscars. When she and Gal Gadot took the stage, the event's organizers played "Someday My Prince Will Come," a song deeply tied to the classic version of Snow White. Many interpreted this as a direct jab at Zegler, undermining her new vision for the film and subtly highlighting how out of sync she is with Disney's own history. Some may argue that the choice of song was a simple callback to the original movie, but others believe it was an intentional move to remind audiences of what Snow White should have been. Regardless of intent, the moment only reinforced the perception that Zegler is an awkward fit for the role and that Disney may already be distancing itself from her. Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen in Snow White, has largely been spared from the criticism aimed at Zegler. In fact, her presence at the Oscars only highlighted Zegler's struggles. Gadot appeared confident and poised, looking stunning in her red dress and literally towering over Zegler. Observers noted that even in their body language, there was a noticeable distance between the two actresses. Gadot was physically leaning away from Zegler at the podium, leading some to speculate that she was intentionally distancing herself from the embattled lead actress. Whether true or not, the visual contrast between the two was striking, and may have further damaged Zegler's credibility as the film's star. Disney's latest attempts to remake its animated classics into live-action films have been met with mixed results. While some have been successful, others have flopped due to poor storytelling, miscasting, and controversial creative choices. Snow White appears to be heading down the latter path. With a struggling lead actress, a controversial reimagining of a beloved story, and a marketing strategy that seems designed to mislead rather than entice, Snow White is shaping up to be a major misstep for Disney. If the film fails at the box office, it could mark a turning point where audiences finally reject Disney's recent approach to filmmaking. For now, all eyes are on the film's release and how audiences react to it. But if early signs are any indication, Snow White may end up being the biggest cautionary tale in Disney's history.